and gentlemen. Welcome to Retro Warriors, episode 274. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Hello! We have housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
It is just the timestamps. I'm doing a weird hand motion that no one can see, but I want you to all know that I look dumb. If you don't want to hear me talk about stuff that's not the topic, then go to the timestamps in the description. Thank you.
We are evolving closer and closer to never discussing the timestamps again and just accepting that they're in the notes.
My week, I talked about it at length at the end of last week's episode, but I've been playing Doom Eternal.
Right.
Because the way we structure our notes, I have to split my week up weird, so I did not bring it up on my week on the last episode, but I did bring it up when Guy asked about it because I was going to talk about it in the same evening because we record in clumps. I feel like I'm explaining a lot of things so far. I'm going to try to lower that down. Doom Eternal is good.
Yes.
And I like it a lot.
And if you want to hear more, go back and listen to the after party on the last episode.
I did also play another game.
Yes.
I finished it, too.
Yeah.
One of our Discord denizens, Elk Neodafs, made a game in RPG Maker on Switch called Dicordian Gods.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you want to play it. There's a code you search for. I want to say it was 245 to find the game. And it featured a cameo by us, which was cute and fun. Yeah. And it was a fun game. And I...
254, by the way.
254, pardon me, if you want to find the game in question. But I had not played a game, RPG Maker game before, and so that was it was interesting. There's already been some weird issues that we as a community have run into, which is kind of frustrating. But hopefully they're getting on top of that.
Right.
But yeah, there's a fun game we're in it. Yeah. We're in the game and we talk about mayonnaise.
And if you've never if you've never played with RPG Maker itself before, I do recommend checking it out. If you can find one of them on sale, if it's not something you're passionate about anyway, you find it on sale.
Right.
Because you can learn a lot about how just game design itself works, about flags and scripting and events and transportations and stuff like that. You get an in-depth perspective of the back end of some of these games, and then some of the weirdness you might encounter will suddenly make a lot more sense.
Yeah. But that's really about all I've been up to other than caring for my Digimon in relentless fashion.
Nice. So I went back to a game that I previously did not enjoy. So I gave Spelunky another shot.
Yeah, because Spelunky 2 just came out on the 29th of September.
And oddly, that's not what spurred it. What got my attention was I was so sick of every YouTube video ever blowing sunshine up its ass.
How does one blow sunshine?
What's that?
How does one blow sunshine?
With their mouth.
Oh, okay. We have very different biological functions, I've just learned.
But no, I feel like there is a trend on the internet, but on YouTube specifically, where everybody treats Dark Souls and Spelunky as the absolute pinnacles of game design and creation.
It's funny, I agree on the Dark Souls front, but I don't see very many people talking about Spelunky. It's at least in the media I consume, it's I would say it's a relative unknown. So that's interesting.
Maybe it's just what I am watching then, because I seem to see it come up over and over again. And I was getting frustrated that these two games that I have personally had negative opinions on were so highly praised. So I decided to give Spelunky another shot, but I had a different mindset this time, because one of the videos that I saw about it, they mentioned that it was a roguelike, because it is roguelike in that you reset from the beginning every time.
Definitely, yeah.
But they also mentioned that is much like a classic arcade experience. The old arcade games you would start at the beginning every time. And so I decided...
Saturn, I've been saying that about roguelikes for years.
Shut up. I don't listen
They're
to you.
RPG arcade games. All right, continue.
So I decided to go back into it with that mindset and give it one more shot, expecting to be upset and angry again. And instead, I have poured 12 hours into it.
Yeah.
And I am just absolutely in love with it. I kept playing and just bashing my head against it, thinking of it like just a quarter eater. And and getting a little bit further and having some good luck runs and some just shit luck runs until I finally got to a place in the fourth area, the temple, where I saw a door and I couldn't do anything with it. And then the next run, I accidentally killed this enemy that kept killing me and got its staff and walked by the door, and it said, the staff fits but nothing happens. And I was like, oh, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And that's what convinced me to finally look at a wiki and discover that I had barely scratched the surface of this game.
Oh, it's deep.
And I started looking at what the requirements were to get to some of the higher end levels, and realized I'll probably never do that.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing that I like about roguelikes is you're almost not even expected to finish them most of the time. You just play it and enjoy it for what it is. And then you go, I'm not going to play 90,000 hours. Or maybe, you know what? One day you'll be playing and you'll get super lucky and you will just so happen to end up in some later part of the game. And it's exhilarating. You know,
I did turn on Cheat Engine just to see if how far I could get with it. Mm-hmm. And I was able to beat the main boss with Cheat Engine on. And even then, after many deaths, even with infinite health, I kept dying. And then I looked at what the requirements were to get past him, and it's so frustrating. I can't even try it.
Yeah.
But it is, I give it much more credit now than I used to, and it is something I'll probably still go back to from time to time just to throw a few runs in, just to kill some time.
And I mean, and certainly the design, like I said, it's not something I see come up, but when it does, the design is very well celebrated. And the designer, is it Derek Yu?
I believe so.
Did I remember that right? Very celebrated as a designer for sure. The game, I got into it originally because it reminded me of La Mulana.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was really into on Wii. La Mulana was great. Super weird and obscure and difficult to parse and opaque game, but...
Yeah, that's why I didn't get into it.
Evidently, I like that. So I remember going into Splunky being like, it's like La Mulana, but different. And it really is more different than it is like it. Right. But aesthetically, like looking at the games, you might be fooled into thinking they're very similar.
Right. Yeah, so it's good. I recommend it. Also, it's October now, so I decided I needed to play at least one Silent Hill game for the month.
Yeah.
And so I decided I would reinstall Silent Hill 3. So I went and grabbed my PC Silent Hill 3 discs and tried to install it and failed because disk rot.
Oh no, it's happening!
Yeah,
the all-digital future was right. Yeah. Our discs are rotting.
Yeah, discs 2 and 4 will no longer read on any of my computers. Like they'll see the file structure, but it can't pull all the files anymore. So it's So
you pirated it, right?
So I pirated a game I already owned.
Don't say it like it's the first time you've ever done that.
No, it's not even close to the first time.
Sometimes I'll pirate a game that I own just because I don't want to get up from my computer to go play it.
I've done that plenty of times. So I had to hunt for the version that I have too, because in Europe they released it on 1 DVD, and over here they released it on 5 CDs, and I didn't know if there was a difference between the two, so I hunted down the 5-disc version. And then learned that the DVD is literally just all the files from those 5 discs on 1 disc.
Yeah.
But I installed it and then went through all the painstaking fan mods and patches to make it look and play like a halfway decent game. But it has some weird control issues. You either have to use a controller emulator to emulate an older PC controller, or find an older PC controller to get it to play right, and that's frustrating. So I downloaded the PS2 version and started playing it on a PS2 emulator, and PCSX2 has some crazy options now. You can do widescreen hacking. You can do where it emulates the resolution at higher than what the PS2 itself could originally render.
Yeah.
And things look fucking gorgeous. Like, I did not realize that some of these textures were this high quality, but being able to see them in 4K, clearly the artists put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
And it's not like AI rescaled or anything. It's just the original textures being rendered higher than what the PS2 could handle. So it looks
so it's the opposite of N64 development, is what you're saying.
Yeah, literally the opposite of that. So since I was messing around with emulators on my PC of closer to modern systems, I also decided I would give Persona 5 another chance on a PS3 emulator, because I'd been playing it on my PS4 where I own it, and I just kind of got to a stopping point, and I don't remember exactly why I stopped. I just kind of fell out of it, and I remember the thing that frustrated me the most about the game was constantly running out of time. So I thought maybe if I play it on an emulator where I can stop the clock every now and then to do everything I want, I'll get further in it. But I haven't gotten far enough to actually do that yet, or even look in to see if there are cheats to make that even possible.
I just like that you're like, what if I altered the design of this game that I don't like so that I would like it, instead of just playing one of the many thousands of games I already own and already like?
Well, I own this one too, though.
Persona 5 to me is like, if you've ever had one of those friends that like goes on 8-week long vacations all the time, and you always think like, man, I wish I could do that, but I never could. I have that same thought about Persona 5. Like, man, I wish I could do that, but I couldn't. I don't think I could.
I love the art style of Persona 5. Like the art and the UX and the design of the art, and the transitions between scenes, and the dialogue boxes and the menus and everything is just absolutely gorgeous. One of the best looking games I've probably ever played. It's just that I keep falling out of the actual gameplay. And the battle system is excellent too. It's a great turn-based battle system, but I just keep falling off for some reason. I want to figure out what it is that's stopping me so that I can get past it, and maybe someday.
Yeah. Let's do some news.
Okay.
Because there's a shitload.
Yeah.
First up, Amazon reveals Luna, their competitor to Game Pass streaming, will cost $5.99 a month during closed beta, and Amazon will make a mobile website available to access streaming on iOS with native apps on Amazon devices and PC. Of course, shocking no one, because Amazon's such a big company that they just have competitors to literally everything.
Right. And the game lineup was interesting because it featured several games from companies that have never signed up for streaming services before.
Interesting.
So
I do. Have they stated if it's going to be potentially included with Prime? Possibly.
No, it will be an additional purchase on top of Prime.
How dare you?
Yeah. And as of now, anyway, you have to purchase their controller to use it, though they have implied that may change when the system gets out of beta.
Yeah.
And they are also positioning it very differently to Stadia, whereas Stadia requires that you purchase games and you don't necessarily have to pay monthly, but you can. This, you do have to pay monthly, and it is a subscription service like Game Pass where you just have a bunch of games you can play.
So this theoretically would be the Netflix for games that everyone wanted Stadia to be, and that Game Pass with xCloud already kind of is.
Right.
A new Virtua Fighter game announced at TGS Digital 2020 will follow a similar release and business model as Street Fighter V with an esports emphasis. I don't like those last little bits, but I accept that the fighting game community seems to, and I'm glad that it is going to have the emphasis that seems to be profitable for them.
Yeah, I wish them success.
Microsoft updating iOS Xbox app to allow in-home console streaming, thus circumventing Apple's weird restrictions in some
you
weird
can stream
way.
your own console, but not games from some other console in the cloud.
But why can't I stream my own PC to it with no Steam's on it?
Steam Link is on iOS
remote
now.
play. Yeah. Okay, so that is their workaround.
Yeah.
Enthusiasts have made an NES game that tracks the position of the International Space Station and uses button inputs instead of a network connection to get accurate data, making it a human-powered network.
Well, no, it uses like basically a taskbot to do its button inputs.
Oh, okay. I thought it means like it tells you what buttons to push and you push them in.
No, it's very fast.
Oh, well, I'm pretty fast.
Oh, okay.
You don't think I could do it?
Yeah, you're pretty much the same as taskbot.
Former Rockstar North producer Leslie Benzies has raised $42. It just says $42.
supposed to be 42 million. My apologies.
Has raised $42 for his upcoming game Everywhere, which will be built using the Amazon Lumberyard game engine. Someone please give him some more money because it's $42 is not much.
It's not going to get him very far in his attempts to make a competitor to Grand Theft Auto. You need at least $43 for that.
I'm excited at the prospect of it. Very excited about that because GTA 5 Online is some of the most fun I've had in modern gaming, and GTA 5 Online is some of the most disgustingly predatory and hateful game design I've ever seen in my life. So it's a hard thing to reconcile.
And this guy has been with Rockstar North for a very long time. He was the producer on Grand Theft Auto 3. And he worked for the company prior to that. I don't know what his title was before that. So he's got some credibility.
Yeah. Capcom announces intent to release Resident Evil 8/RE Village 8 Village Resident Evil Village 8
No, Village
on
Resident
PS
Evil.
Village Resident Evil, but it's 8.
Yeah.
Village
Don't
Resident
call
Evil
it
8 on okay, I just have to do I just extra pronounce the Roman numeral part of it?
Exactly.
Village on PS4, Xbox One, and PC.
Right. So that's good. That's one more
That is
reason
good.
I don't have to buy a new console.
Finally, there are so many reasons. They seem to be stacking up.
Right.
Mobile developer Zynga, they're still around, announces
Zynga.
that they will be shutting down. What?
I don't know.
Oh, will be shutting down the original Farmville, which I don't think anyone cares about, but everyone is for some reason sad about.
Well,
It's very strange.
yeah, I have no attachment to Farmville. I think it's garbage, but it was a huge deal when it happened. So
It was. As far as preservation purposes, I hope it's preserved somewhere because it was a massive driving force in the games industry in its own way.
Especially in the mobile and flash-based gaming industry.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a massive thing. So
Square Enix announces a 26th anniversary live stream celebrating cult Super Famicom game Live Alive. Live
Alive.
Live Alive.
Yes.
I got it.
And I'm excited. I hope this means that we will see a re-release like we had for the Romancing Saga games. I would like to see a better treatment than they got, but I will accept at least that much, especially if it gets an international release because it hasn't yet. And that was a really neat and interesting game that I think needs more attention.
Yeah. EA fell down and accidentally clicked a button on a computer that tasked its entire company with intentionally including an ad for loot boxes in a children's toy catalog in the UK.
Oops.
Oh, oops! I have this app on my phone I click a button and it engages in predatory business practices. And I was trying to call my mom and I clicked it and I was like, oh no, predatory business practices.
Right.
But I quickly hit the ethical and fun button to follow it up with. So
I was
it's
trying to
fine.
just watch
Fuck
some
you,
porn
EA.
on my phone, and instead I sold gambling to children. I don't know what happened.
The idea of having an ad for a loot box is already not only normalized in the game industry, but also disgusting to me. So I hope they get hammered.
Right.
Square Enix announces Dragon Quest Tact, a tactical strategy RPG in the Dragon Quest series featuring gacha mechanics, and it's for mobile.
Yay.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot to put in the notes, but the new Dragon Quest anime series based off of the manga from the 90s is available in English on Crunchyroll now.
I cannot state how much I didn't know I wanted a Dragon Quest SRPG until they stole it from me.
Yeah, pretty much.
And put it on a phone.
And you know what's worse? It looks good.
Man.
Those dicks.
Xbox reveals Series S anime mascot girl at TGS 2020. I wish I could say it's the first anime girl version of a video game console I've
not even
seen, but it
close.
seems to be a regular thing.
Yeah, that's a normal thing in Japan apparently. And I love that it became a news story in the West, especially all of the reporters who reported on it who are not aware that it is a normal thing over there. They just thought that this was some crazy madcap attempt by Microsoft to break into the market when no, it's just expected kind of.
It's just a thing. Yeah. Tattoo artist sues Take-Two over the depiction of his tattoos on a wrestler in WWE 2K. While I'm not upset at someone suing 2K or
Right.
Take-Two, it's an interesting case.
Yeah.
because they have reproduced his art without his permission. But then the question is, how much ownership do you have over art that you've inked into someone else's body?
Right, especially when you know that person performs in front of a camera.
Yeah. So interesting to say the least.
Right.
CD Projekt Red goes back on previous promise and instates mandatory crunch for Cyberpunk 2077 developers, the game that they themselves are developing, publishing, and releasing.
Yeah,
so that's, God damn it.
Now, I can kind of get why they desperately need to get it done on time. I get that part because they've already made contracts with all these retailers that are expecting to sell copies on a specific date.
And then it's still bad project management.
Right,
They
I
should
agree
have
with
seen
that.
it coming. It's
Absolutely.
not like they haven't released games before,
Right.
Yeah,
they should have given themselves more time. I agree with that. But now that it is already this close to release date, I get that, now is the time to realize you fucked up. But it is unfortunate that they didn't realize it until this close.
And to their credit, by all accounts, they are paying overtime rates, and I don't ever want to imply that crunch is healthy or that it even can be healthy.
Right.
But I think that if you are going to engage in crunch, they are doing it in the least offensive way possible.
I guess.
Really, the biggest problem is that they promised they would not, and then they did.
Right.
And I don't like to see broken promises from companies who are breaking their promises over projects that they themselves have complete and total control over.
Yeah, and especially when it's a company that you otherwise respect.
Yeah,
because
Nintendo reverses previous decision and will leave Jump Rope Challenge on the eShop until further notice. Thank you, Nintendo, for gracing us with one of the games that you made and allowing us to access it indefinitely. And maybe even give you money for some things. Sometimes they're just so kind and generous. Anyway, make sure you get Mario All-Stars because it's going to be gone in March, so make sure you purchase it. And if you're not freaking out about it, you should be. Also, these pins are here, but you can't fucking get them because the website crashed.
I'm still upset about that.
Fuck you, Nintendo.
Right. I didn't even have to deal with the website
frustrated.
crash. I just came home from work like an hour and a half after they went live, and it was like, no, they're already sold out. Sorry.
Yeah. Retailers are canceling PS5 and Xbox Series X pre-orders due to lower than expected stock. The question is that low expectation coming from the console manufacturers or from retailers being dumb? And I think the answer is both.
Yeah. And also, as we mentioned last week, some retailers are reopening pre-order windows for some of these consoles. So it's even stranger that they would be canceling pre-orders.
I would be so fucking mad if I fought to for the privilege to give these multi-billion-dollar companies my money, and then the retailer was like, "Nah, canceled." Hey, pre-orders are open, and I didn't get one.
Right, and they were also saying
so
with the Xbox Series X pre-orders, at least in the UK and possibly over here as well, they were saying that people that attempted to pre-order them and their pre-order didn't go through due to general website fuckery that day. If you were trying to do all access, it still hit your credit report.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's real rough.
Right?
Seeing as how that goes through a bank, I can guarantee you they won't take that off.
Nope, they don't give a shit.
They'll just tell you to suck it up. We're financial institutions. Sucks to be everyone but us.
Right?
Nintendo adds physical Animal Crossing goodies to My Nintendo Rewards shop.
Yeah. You can use your
Neat.
platinum coins.
At least I can use them for something.
Right?
Silent Hill 4 The Room, rated for PC and then released on GOG the very next day.
And I'm a sucker, so I bought it.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it's good. They did
okay.
They did a good job. Now I still have the DVD of this for PC, and I had just installed it the day before. And the existing PC version it installs and runs on Windows 10, but it immediately tries to resize everything to 640 by 480 when it runs. So it's not pleasant. Whereas this version scales to whatever resolution you're in, and it runs pillar boxed, so it's not stretched or anything. It looks good. It works with an Xbox controller, but with slightly wonky controls. But if you plug in a PS4 or a Switch controller, it just plays like the PS2 and Xbox game did.
Or feasibly, you could push it through Steam and remap it however you want.
Possibly, but it's its issue is that it doesn't see the triggers as buttons, so I don't know how
same as
well.
the Metal Gear games.
Right,
Thanks,
exactly.
Konami.
Yeah. It does see them as a third analog stick that it will let you use to look up and down.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sega's Game Gear Micro is smaller than a VMU, and as someone who has played games on a VMU, because I had a Godzilla Virtual Pet on one, that sounds like it sucks.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus.
And Nintendo is arguing in court that Joy-Con drift is, quote, not a real problem, or, quote, hasn't caused anyone any inconvenience.
Certainly not.
Nintendo, I don't fucking understand you. And I know we have a show to do, and we've got a lot of material to cover.
Sure.
But I just want to have publicly gone on the record and said that it's extremely hard for a company like Nintendo to fall so quickly out of my good graces because I care so much on a genuine, deep-seated, unhealthy emotional level about and for Nintendo as a company.
Right.
And I'm usually the person saying, hey, you shouldn't have these emotional ties to companies, and I do maintain that, but Nintendo is my one emotional company vice where I would say, yes, I am a fanboy.
Right.
That, yes, I am basically just buying anything they're selling. And recently, they've kind of made me feel the opposite.
Yeah.
And I don't understand because right now they are doing better than they have done in a very long time.
Now, with this specific story, they are still fixing Joy-Cons for free if people have drift. So they're acknowledging that the issue happens. It is, in fact, a real problem.
Well, this is after like a year and a half of them refusing to acknowledge it in the first place. Right. There was the whole initial fight to get them to acknowledge it, and then now they're back in court trying to unacknowledge it.
Yeah, I think what this is they're still fixing them, so they know it's a problem, but this is just some kind of legal posturing so they can get out of having to pay for it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it is.
Because this is part of the class action suit, and they don't want to pay that.
Well, they fucking should.
Yeah, they really should.
So I don't know. I just wanted to go on record as saying that Nintendo is rubbing me the wrong way with just about everything they've done recently. Even the things that they've done that I like, they find some way to make it shitty.
And that said, as soon as the new Zelda is announced, I'm there. I'm buying it.
I mean, yeah, me too. You know. I'm just upset about it. Microsoft is really just, God damn it, Microsoft, release some kind of handheld because I'm a handheld guy and you're giving me no options.
They have. They just released this phone adapter for xCloud.
Yep, and it comes in the 8BitDo controller. I forgot about that.
There is the 8BitDo one, too. They released two. There's the 8BitDo SN30 designed for xCloud, and then there's also one that snaps on either end of your phone so that it looks like a Switch Lite.
See, I like that because I don't like the... because I have one of those Xbox phone clips, and it holds my phone above my controller, and I don't like the feel of that and the weight distribution. I want something that clips on either side. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm going to buy that. Fuck you, Nintendo. I don't need you. But when the new Zelda comes out, let me know because pre-orders. I got to pre-order that physical.
Right.
I got to have that one.
We'll be there.
My collection. This week, we're talking about Enix.
Yes.
Which is not me forgetting to pronounce the first part of that company's name. It was its own company. Before Square absorbed it, or Enix absorbed Square, whatever happened.
Right.
Before the cellular absorption happened of these two companies.
Before the flattening.
And Enix was, of course, one of the earliest Japanese game publishers and pioneered the publishing of JRPGs. Yes. And we talked about them a little bit when we were talking about JRPG Boot Camp and some of their early 80s output.
Right.
We do have some listener feedback. First up is Rawbeat, who says, my love for Enix came when my friend talked me into buying Valkyrie Profile, which was unlike any JRPG I had played up until then. I even really liked the sequel on PS2. It made me kind of sad when Saturn had put it on a hidden gems list because it shouldn't be hidden. Everyone should play that game. Oh, and Dragon Quest games are okay too.
I agree that everyone should play that game, but unfortunately a lot of people have not.
The Todd Barker says, my only real exposure to pre-Square Enix is Illusion of Gaia. It came with the SNES that I convinced my parents to help me buy on eBay. An elementary school friend and I got into it during a sleepover, passing the controller between us. I don't recall much about it now, but I have been meaning to give it another go after falling in love with Secret of Mana on Switch.
Nice.
Rygar Starkong says, Enix is synonymous with JRPG titles, but I want to bring attention to a little gem for the SNES called Evo Search for Eden.
Yes.
It was such a revolutionary and cool game for the time, and it is. It's very fun.
Oh, yeah, I love that game.
And finally, Elkneadafs writes in and says, as a fan of city building games, I'll always have a soft spot for ActRaiser. I took ActRaiser home, got deep enough into it to write the manual, and never looked back. Well, I looked back once in disappointment at ActRaiser 2. What's up, Enix? Why'd you take my city building out of your city building game?
Yeah, ActRaiser 2 is just a disappointment.
We have a defunct show that was called An Evening With,
Yes.
and we did cover ActRaiser 1 and 2 on an episode of Evening With.
Right.
Maybe I should see if I can dig that out somewhere.
Right.
Can release that, or we could just cover the games again. Saturn, tell me about Enix.
No.
I hear that it is one half of the famed Square Enix that does the Final Fantasies.
What is that?
Yes.
Um,
It's an MMO series from Japan. They've recently deviated to single player games, though.
oh, neat.
Yeah, I know.
actually-
Interesting.
I heard that FF16 is being headed by the guy that heads FF14, and that actually makes me more interested in it than I was before.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anyway, back to that other half of Square Enix.
Yeah.
So they're founded. They're founded on September 22nd, 1975, in Tokyo. They merged with Square on April 1st of 2003 to become what is now.
I'm sorry.
Enix.
They merged on April Fool's Day.
Yeah, and I was certain that it was a fucking joke when the internet started posting about it.
What a fucking the only day in the calendar year that you're like, no, don't announce company news on this. This is the one
Right.
day of the year you can't announce shit.
Yeah, fortunately they announced
they
it a
did
couple of months before that, but they
Right.
announced that it would happen on that date, and I was like, no, this is some bullshit. This is just a joke.
Yeah.
But no, according to the press release before the merger, the name Enix is a play on the words Phoenix, mythical bird, and ENIAC, the world's first digital computer.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I don't believe you. I believe it's just the end of Phoenix.
Yeah, I believe that they came up with all that after the fact.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that said, any Japanese Enix title where they pronounce the name, they always said it Enix. So either they didn't know how to pronounce Phoenix, or all of it is bullshit.
Is it just me, or is there a trend in Japanese companies coming up with what their name means seemingly long after the fact and in such a way with such a fantastic story that you never believe them?
I'm not even sure if it's just Japanese companies.
I maybe it's just because we covered so many Japanese companies on the show. That's just where I've noticed it.
Right.
But I just feel, I don't know.
It does
Maybe
seem
I'm
to be a
just
trend.
creating patterns where there are none.
But so the company was founded by a architect in Japan, guy named Yasuhiro Fukushima, who is still an honorary chairman at Square Enix today. And he is also one of the top 25 wealthiest people in Japan with a worth of over $2 billion US.
That's hell. He could buy Square Enix.
Possibly. And originally they opened up under the name Aidansha Boshu Service Center, and they published real estate tabloids.
What?
Yep, that was their thing. It was a real
What
estate
is a real
tabloid
estate
company.
tabloid?
I don't know. I tried to find out exactly what that was.
Because as an American, to me, a tabloid is like a B-tier sensational news outlet of questionable worth.
well, I think
That's what a tabloid is to me.
I think it's also just like any of those lower budget throwaway rags.
Yeah, like a real estate tabloid,
Yeah.
like Bat Boy found in house for sale for $200,000. Tour it today. Like what? I'm sure tabloids are different over there than they are here.
Well, it might be an older definition of the term tabloid too. We were
Right.
talking about the 70s.
I like mine where Bat Boy is running around at different properties and real estate agents are chasing him out of there.
Right.
That's
It's Weekly World Real Estate.
and then Bennifer gets divorced.
Yeah. So they eventually made a subsidiary called Aidancia Fudosan.
Yes.
Yes. It was established in 1980 to deal in real estate trading and brokerage to deal with to accompany their previous tabloid business.
And then they made Dragon Quest.
A little later, almost.
Oh,
there.
damn.
And that division was renamed Idancia Systems in August 81, before again being renamed in August 82 as Enix Corporation, which is getting us closer to what we're actually looking at.
We recently, what was the last Japanese game company we covered? Because they had a really boring story too.
Yeah, it was IREM.
Yes.
Yeah.
IREM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I don't.
Well, fortunately, Enix got into games pretty quickly after that.
I wonder about because it seems I mean, this was the 70s, and it wasn't uncommon even in other countries, because you saw it in America a lot where companies would shift into making games.
Right.
You know, like Coleco was the Connecticut Leather Company or whatever,
and they made Cabbage Patch dolls or some kind of doll, and then also leather goods.
Yeah, like the Coleco.
Yeah,
which was also little known fact, made of leather. Whole thing.
Also, CBS, the TV company, they made games for a while there.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
CBS?
Yeah, CBS, the TV the network. They made video
Channel
games.
11 made video games?
Back then.
Pardon me, channel whatever number your local affiliate is, but for me it's 11.
Well, in Dallas at the time, it was Channel 4 was CBS.
Oh, no. 4 is Fox.
4 didn't become Fox until 94.
Well, in 94, I was 6.
Yeah.
So I must not remember that change.
This is way off topic, but for people who are TV history buffs, there was a great shift, a realignment of networks, and I want to say it was either 93 or 94. I'm pretty sure it was 94, where the Fox Corporation bought a bunch of studios across the country and immediately changed them into Fox networks. And so whatever network was on that channel desperately had to find somewhere to go. And so many markets had a shift in that era, and we were just one of them.
But tell me about Enix as a game publisher, Saturn.
Okay. They were not CBS. No, they were trying still to get their real estate business out of this small regional market, and they failed. So instead, they decided they would try games instead.
They couldn't oust Bat Boy, so they had to shift.
Yeah.
They had to pivot.
He didn't want to move somewhere else into a house for sale, so they just had to shift their focus.
I don't know why just imagining Japanese real estate agents in those red blazers chasing Bat Boy out of houses is the funniest thing in the world to me right now.
But yeah, so when they wanted to get into video games, rather than like trying to hire any programmers or anything, they just held a programming contest. Possibly in their tabloid. I didn't get the answer to that part. Now, a smart company would have held a game creation contest, so they would just have the whole completed product at the end of the contest. This is what it was. It was just like, make your own game and tell us what it is. So among the winners, and there were several winners that they chose and then published their games, you had a freelance newspaper writer named Yuji Hori who made a title called Love Match Tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a high school student named Koichi Nakamura who made a puzzle game called Door Door. And Door Door would go on to be Enix's first hit in the home computer market. Nakamura would be brought on as one of Enix's key programmers until he left in '84 to establish Chunsoft, which is still around today.
Spike Chunsoft, as they are now.
Right after their merger. Just like Enix had to merger, so did Chunsoft. Nakamura and Chunsoft would continue to work closely with Enix over the next decade, even after he had left, in development of several key titles. And he was one of the few people that I was able to identify that actually became an employee of Enix for a little bit there. Everybody else was almost always contractors.
Yeah.
Which is weird in the video game world now, but
right.
I guess the rules hadn't been established yet.
Yeah. Or it could have been for tax purposes, or maybe they were still doing real estate stuff, or who knows.
And they didn't want to hire anybody that wasn't an expert in real estate yet.
Right.
They were not ready to make that leap. Another big early title was Portopia Serial Murder Case, which was conceived by Hori before he worked with Enix, and it was his attempt to represent Western adventure games in Japan, and is frequently cited as the first ever visual novel. And we did mention it in the JRPG episode,
right?
And yeah, he never joined the company. He has never joined the company. He has never been no. He has never been an Enix employee.
Oh my
god! He currently.
At what point does he become so critical to your company that you just hire the guy?
Right? That's how he was able to make Chrono Trigger with Square back in the mid '90s, because he was never officially an Enix employee. So he was just like, "Yeah, I'll take this one job for them."
Well, yeah, but wrestlers in the WWE are technically contractors unless they work anywhere else, and then they're fucking fired.
Right. They're just exclusive contractors.
Oh, exclusive. Yeah, there we go. There's some fucking mental gymnastics.
Right?
Anyway.
Yeah, so yeah, he never joined the company. He's always been a freelancer. Now he runs a studio called Bird Studio, which is still copyrighted on every Dragon Quest game. Yeah, aside from those very popular titles, they mostly published a lot of low-budget PC games, including a lot of adult games on those early Japanese computers. And I think we briefly mentioned that on the JRPG episode too, but there's a lot of them. When trying to find all of Enix's early games, there's a lot of adult titles, more than would be accepted today.
I don't know. There's a pretty thriving hentai game market these days.
Fair. They were one of the pioneers.
They were just too early.
Right. And then after the Famicom picked up, Enix decided that they wanted to try to get in on that because it was ludicrously popular in Japan. So they hired Chunsoft to port Dordor, which was made by Nakamura, to the Famicom in early '85. And during that conversion, Nakamura happened to be introduced to Yuji Horii to begin work on a conversion of Portopia to Famicom. And Horii was so impressed with the way that Nakamura converted that text-heavy game to Famicom and made it into a simple navigation system that led to the two of them working together on a new game, which they wanted to bring the role-playing genre to Japan, which, of course, ended up being Dragon Quest, which we covered in much more depth in 2 other episodes now.
Dragon Quest, well known as a Western-style RPG.
Yeah, it's pretty much it.
Well remembered.
Right. Well, the Western computer RPG market had not yet
become a thing.
Right. Yeah, it was still in its infancy.
People were still flying around in spaceships, courtesy of Lord British.
Right. Pretty much that. That's Dragon Quest is basically just Lord British the Japan. But yeah, so in '89, Eidansha Boshu Service decided to merge all their subsidiaries back into the parent company and just renamed the entire thing Enix Corporation. And they decided to focus on the publishing arm, and they began to phase out the real estate business finally in 1989, which is also the year that Dragon Quest came to America.
Coincidentally.
Yeah. So yeah,
and as we all know, took America by storm.
Definitely. And they sold a jillion copies.
Well, they handed out a jillion copies.
Almost.
There are a jillion copies of it in the Western market.
Right. Yeah. You just have to ask someone for them, and they'll present some.
If you lived in the suburbs, you were issued it.
You were. It came with the magazine. Yeah. So they. It did do well enough in America. Even before the giveaway, they sold enough copies that Enix was interested, and so they did form an American branch. They made Enix America Corporation, who handled the localization of their Western games. And because the kind of computers they were used to working with in Japan weren't available outside of Japan, they just didn't even touch any of their PC games. They just ignored it and only did Dragon Quest on the NES. That was the only games they bothered to localize.
Well, I feel like we got the cream of the crop there anyway.
Yeah, kind of. Well, Dordor is actually kind of fun. I did.
Well, yeah, but that's a puzzle game. You can probably
Yeah.
play that in Japanese.
You absolutely can. There is nothing
go.
to translate.
You probably also play Nuts and Milk in Japanese.
You could play
I don't know why I always
Clue
want to bring up Nuts and Milk when we talk about the Famicom.
That's
So I just can't think of a more boring game like, oh, little Timmy, we got you a Famicom. Oh boy, what game did I get? Nuts and Milk. I'm sorry, what? Nuts and milk, two great tastes that taste great together. No, that's not true either. None of this is true.
Anytime I hear nuts and milk, I always think of almond milk, which is nuts in milk.
Well, that's milk
of nuts.
From nuts.
It's milk of nuts.
Yeah. It's starting to sound weird. Let's just move on.
Anyway, milk nuts.
Milk of Nuts is the name of an adult film I'm producing.
Yeah.
Tell me about their continued growth, Saturn.
So, just thinking of milk of nuts now. So by 1990, they had published about 50 games, but only 6 of them had ever made it to the NES. All the rest of them were Japanese PC games.
Yeah.
And they started to phase out that PC development in 91, opting to just work with Nintendo, which is the year that they also went public on the JASDAQ Japanese Stock Exchange. And they also began publication of monthly shonen Gangan. I never know how to pronounce that word.
Gongan? I think it'd be Gongan,
I
but I'm not.
You. I am not a manga aficionado, so I apologize for that.
And they still own the Gongan Comics imprint.
Oh yeah, that's still published by Square Enix today.
Yeah. Yep.
And they also did their spin-off monthly G Fantasy in 93. Both of those are still in production. There's actually like a dozen different monthly manga magazines that Enix published over the years.
I was looking to see if Shonen Gongan had any stuff I recognized, and Full Metal Alchemist is on the list, as is Soul Eater.
Yep, yeah, and there's a handful of others. There's also a lot that are based on video game properties, and not just Enix
I imagine so.
I see a lot of Namco games. There was a Fire Emblem series in there for a while, and then after the merger, you saw Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles series. So they published a bit.
Yeah.
And they continued to outsource the development of all their games. They never brought in an internal development studio. So they continued to just be a publisher for pretty much their entire life. But the first 5 Dragon Quest games were all developed by Chunsoft, Nakamura's company. And other Enix titles would be developed by all kinds of publishers. The notable ones, Quintet, who developed the Heaven and Earth games, so Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and Terra Enigma, as well as Robotrek and ActRaiser. You have Tri-Ace, who did Star Ocean, Produce, who did Seventh Saga and Brainlord.
That's the one we could forget about.
I actually kind of like both of those games.
You're allowed to like them.
I know.
You just shouldn't.
They're not good, though.
You shouldn't like Seventh Saga or Brainlord.
No. There's also a company called Almanac, who later changed their name to Givro, presumably because they just didn't want anyone to be able to pronounce the name of their studio.
Or know who they were,
right.
Yeah.
And they did EVO as well as Wonder Project J. And there's a bunch of other companies that you go in, but those are the notable ones that they worked with over the years.
Right.
And despite how well Dragon Quest did in Japan, Dragon Warrior in the US never quite met the sales levels. But it wasn't bad enough that Enix America closed. They just decided to focus on their more action-heavy games and action RPGs as they went into the 16-bit era. A lot of the ones we just mentioned there. Until they eventually closed their doors in America in 1995. But before they did, they published a fully Western developed game, which is also the only Western exclusive game that Enix ever produced, which is King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, based on the Canadian cartoon of the same name.
I want you to know that I you know how when you're very young, you have some specific memories that you just remember these weird snippets of, but that's it.
Yeah.
I have a weird snippet memory of me being very young.
Yeah.
And my mom is ironing stuff, clothes, not just things around the house, but clothes.
Plants, cats, whatever.
Yeah, just, me. Ow! She's just ironing, and I'm sitting there watching the best cartoon I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I could never for years remember what that dumb cartoon was called. And I've tried to look it up before. Apparently there are multiple King Arthur cartoons.
Yeah.
Shocking nobody. And as soon as you said King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, I was like, was that it? And I Googled it, and that's the fucking cartoon.
Nice. Don't
King
play
Arthur
the game.
and the Knights of Justice. It is so badass. I loved it. And I only ever saw one episode that day.
It didn't last very long in the U.S.
And for years, I would look for it and could not find it because these days, most very bad cartoons are forgotten. Nobody remembers things like the Black Star cartoon. You know, nobody's sitting around talking about Inhumanoids.
Yeah, I hope not.
But back in the day, everyone remembered all the shitty cartoons, so there was so many to sift through, I could never find it. So that was it. I'm going to go watch it later.
Yeah, don't play the game, though. It's okay. It's not great.
I wasn't going to.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. So anyway, after Enix America closed down in 96, Square had announced that they would no longer publish games for Nintendo, and it was a giant fucking deal. And everybody was conversely either very upset or very excited to see Square move to the PlayStation. Enix instead decided that they would, for the first time, start supporting all platforms. They published their first Saturn game, which was Nanatsu Kaze no Shima Monogatari, in November of 97. I have no idea what that game is or what it's about. I tried to look it up, and I didn't understand any of it. I could not find any English language information about it. And then their first PlayStation game was the Japanese localization of Riven, the sequel to Myst, in December of 97. And then they started to see some success in the West again by licensing some of their games to Western publishers. They licensed Dragon Quest Monsters on Game Boy, Star Ocean: The Second Story on PlayStation, and Buster Groove on PlayStation. And all three of those did pretty well with their English localizations, well enough that they reopened Enix America. They even brought in the same staff, mostly, from the original Enix America, which is neat. And they resumed localizing games. And then they moved up from the JASDAQ exchange to the proper Tokyo Stock Exchange in 99 as well, as they began to grow as a company. And of course, this was pre-Dragon Quest VII, so they were just...
Right.
All of their money was coming from delaying Dragon Quest VII. That's their primary source of income, was just in telling people that it's not ready yet.
Hype, merchandise, delays, and relying solely on external contractors.
Right, yeah. That's the winning business formula of the Enix
Yeah, it seems like they run their company a lot like a lot of governments run everything.
Right. Just false promises and hype.
And independent
contractors. And in June of 2001, Enix, Namco, and Square announced they would be working together on some online ventures because of how much online gaming cost to develop. They did not, none of them wanted to front it. And Namco, I think, got the short end of that stick post-merger because they were just kind of left high and dry while Square and Enix ran off with technology.
Right.
And also in June of 2001, Enix bought a sizable share of Game Arts, not the entire company, but enough to secure the publication rights for the Grandia series for a very long time there. Then after a year of negotiation, in November of 2002 is when they finally said that they would be merging with Square, to happen the following year, with Enix as the surviving company that would be rebranded to Square Enix.
Yeah.
And
I don't know why in my head it's always the reverse.
Right.
And I think it's just because I was aware of Squaresoft. Right. I was not aware of Enix.
Yeah, in anywhere outside of Japan, Square was a much bigger company.
Yeah.
But in Japan, Enix was a much bigger company.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in fact, post-merger, most of the management at Square Enix was just former Square Enix management, though the Western division, Enix America, was completely dissolved, and Square Electronic Arts took over as Square Enix USA. So that makes sense. Square was much bigger outside of Japan.
Right. So that's Enix in gaming in a nutshell as a company, from chasing Batboy to chasing dreams.
Yeah.
That's the name of our documentary we're making about Enix. For people that don't know about Batboy, he was on the cover of all the tabloids in America for years.
No, just Weekly World News.
Was it just the one?
Yeah, that was their original character, and they would sue the shit out of anybody who tried to use him.
He was everywhere, and everyone made fun of Batboy and how dumb he was. Saturn, tell me about Enix
outside.
News
was hilarious, by the way. It was a parody satire tabloid that did not take themselves seriously, and it was great.
Tell me about Enix outside of the video games.
There's a lot. There's so much that I just didn't bother to research most of it. So also because most of the research that I found was
in Japanese
translations of Japanese.
Yeah.
So there was the manga arm. Also, they remained involved in other electronics and programming development. I found on Wikipedia they set up a subsidiary titled BMF in Kanagawa Prefecture to handle a fingerprint identification system operation. They took a 68% stake in the company, and this is directly from Wikipedia. The subsidiary was expected to post a pre-tax profit of 12 million yen on sales of 135 million yen in the first 5 months of operation. So that's huge for a fingerprint company.
Right.
And then apparently they still own some percentage of that fingerprint company today. They also entered into a joint venture with Waseda University to distribute broadband sports equipment, which they owned an 80% stock in. So they just kept doing all these weird, random bullshit things throughout their life.
Right.
A lot like real estate.
Yes. Well, I like to imagine that the executives at Square Enix are just still doing this video game thing until they can get back to real estate tabloids, their true passion. Yeah. And that's why they've never hired anyone, because they're like, hey, once we get back to real estate tabloids, we don't want to lay off all these people. So we'll just keep...
Well, post-merger, they have employees, because Square had a ton of internal developers.
Well, they'll have to deal with those when it happens, but for now, they're going to release maybe one more Final Fantasy, and then back to real estate tabloids and fingerprint software.
Thank God.
That's their true passion.
Wouldn't want to give up the real estate tabloids. That's the important side of the business.
As big as they are, I don't even know if they would report it, but they may be still doing the same real estate tabloid business somewhere and just not saying anything and nobody knows because who cares?
Yeah, just in little tiny print on the back of it, it's like published by Square Enix.
It's just 1% of their company at this point, so it's just,
And Square Enix still has all of these weird subdivisions, mostly legacy from Enix, that just do these weird things that you would not expect of Square Enix.
As far as company impact, I love that Saturn so easily could have just made this a whole episode about Dragon Quest, and he resisted the urge.
I tried desperately to not just talk about Dragon Quest the whole time.
And I don't know how, but Enix's Dragon Quest has sold over 78 million copies worldwide at the time of the merger.
Yeah, that was in 2004. It had sold 78 million copies.
And that was before it really was even a thing in the West.
Right.
And an overwhelming majority of those copies were in Japan, again, because Dragon Warrior existed over here, but I feel like Dragon Quest 8 was when it really was like, oh, hey, this is a thing, and people seem to be paying attention to it.
Because it came with the demo of Final Fantasy 12.
That was why I bought it.
I know.
Enix's other divisions include the print and merchandising divisions, and as we stated, remain a part of Square Enix today. Also, I secretly suspect their tabloid real estate business. And then all of their other stuff they do in Japan that you said that we can't really find or understand information about because it is not in English.
They also have a merchandising division, which we briefly mentioned there, but it makes like toys and and figures and stuff. And some of the Figma and Play Arts and stuff you can get from Square Enix's online store in the West, and it costs like $200 per figure. They're exorbitant, but incredibly highly detailed.
Oh yeah.
But as far as like the plush dolls and stuff that they have been making, that Enix has been making since the 90s at least, they never made any based on Dragon Quest. They outsourced that to Namco for years.
Did Enix do anything?
I don't know.
Like, or were they just...
Like, I have so many old slime plushies from the 90s and early 2000s from pre-merger, and they all have Namco logos on them.
Weird.
But the post-merger plushies are all Square Enix branded. So they finally started taking over that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's weird.
Well, Enix is a weird company.
They are.
But they make cool video games, and I like video games. That's my final thoughts on Enix.
And you finally learned what that King Arthur series was.
Yeah, finally! Yet another strange company from strange beginnings that has ended up to dominate so much of their respective industry.
Right.
Because I think in my head, Square Enix is always that JRPG company. They still are, but they are so much bigger than that JRPG company these days. They are one of the bigger publishers of games.
Yeah, especially after purchasing IDOS, they just became a massive media empire.
I would say that as far as video games go, JRPGs are probably a minority of their output if you include publishing as well. Yeah. So by all accounts, Square Enix isn't even really the JRPG company anymore.
Right. And
so it's strange to think about.
But yeah, as far as Enix games to look into for anybody who is interested, obviously there's the Dragon Quest series. You may have heard of that. The Heaven and Earth trilogy, which I mentioned earlier. So Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, Terranigma, all three of them are great. Terranigma didn't come out in the US, but it did come out in Europe in English, so you can play that one. I love the first ActRaiser. I could give two shits about the second one. The entire Star Ocean series is... the Enix published is good. It's gotten a little mediocre since the merger, but it's still good.
There's a great Switch port of Star Ocean.
Oh, yeah. The Switch and PS4 ports of Star Ocean 1 are both great.
Very good.
EVO is great. Brainlord...
Which has not been on anything, I don't think. No. EVO is still stuck on the Super Nintendo.
Right, yeah. I worry if there's like a rights issue with some of these early games because, again, they were all developed by other companies.
Right. I can't imagine the weird... tangle of rights issues they have to deal with.
So in most early Enix games have not been reprinted on anything. The NES and Super NES Dragon Quest games got a reprint on the Wii on a disc, not on Virtual Console. It was put on a disc.
Weird.
So I always wonder if all those early Enix games are just kind of locked in time because of those external developers.
Yeah, very, very possibly. It could also just be one of those things where they could work it out, but they just don't.
Yeah, they want to keep it in the Disney vault right next to the 3D Mario games.
I mean, it's not like they're not releasing stuff so prolifically now anyway.
Right, exactly.
You know, so. Anyway, that's Enix. I hope you enjoyed hearing about our favorite real estate tabloid company. I know I did. And we would also enjoy it if you would support the show at patreon.com/retrowarriors. Yeah. Or don't, but we'd like it if you did. That would be very nice, and we would like that. Also, join our Discord. Listen to our free movie podcast, Cinema Rogues. There are links in the description to the show that you're listening to right now.
Right.
And you can go find all kinds of cool engagement things to engage with us as a community.
Yes.
And we hope you do them. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.